You've probably seen the photo, you know the one, from deep inside the Chernobyl reactor, showing this massive, wrinkled gray blob. It's called the elephant's foot, and it's got this reputation for being the most dangerous object on the planet. But what is it really? Okay, let's get into the actual science behind this bizarre nuclear relic. So, is the elephant's foot the answer to that question? You might think so, but as we're about to find out, just calling it a rock or even just a blob of melted fuel doesn't even come close to explaining its truly weird and complicated identity. All right, first things first, we need to bust a pretty big myth. Because the real story of the elephant's foot is, believe me, way more interesting than the simple version you've probably heard. So here's the main takeaway. It is not just a pure lump of melted nuclear fuel. The scientific reality is that it's a technogenic silicate rock. Now, that sounds like a mouthful, I know, but it's a way more accurate description, and it tells us a completely different story about what happened. So what does technogenic even mean? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. It just means it was made by us, by human technology. It's basically a man-made rock, an entirely new kind of geology that was forged in the absolute heart of a nuclear disaster. And we can get even more specific. Scientists actually classify this stuff as a black ceramic. You can basically think of it as a kind of man-made glassy lava. It has its own unique properties, completely distinct from anything else found in the wreckage. Okay, so if it's not pure fuel, then what in the world is in this thing? Let's actually break down the recipe for this very strange man-made rock. And this is where the story gets really, really weird. Just look at this. The huge chunk of this chart, somewhere between 70 and 90% of the elephant's foot, is just melted building materials. Yeah, we're talking about sand and concrete. The actual nuclear fuel, that's that tiny little slice over there. This just turns what we thought we knew completely on its head, right? And if we dig into the chemistry, you can see it right here. That top line, silica, or SiO2, that's the vast majority of it. It's the main ingredient in sand and concrete. Then, further down the list, you find the uranium from the fuel, the zirconium from the protective fuel rods, all of it melted together into this chaotic radioactive stew. Now, that huge amount of silica isn't just a random fact. It's the absolute key to the whole story. See, that silica acted like a chemical grease. It lowered the melting point of everything and created a lava that was runny enough to pour down through pipes and hallways, finally coming to a stop where they found it. If it were pure melted fuel, it would have been way too thick to go anywhere. But wait, the story doesn't end there, because tucked away inside this chaotic, glassy lava, scientists found something incredible, something totally new, a mineral that had never, ever been seen before on this planet. Which brings us to the big question, right? If it's mostly just melted sand and concrete with some fuel mixed in, why is it so special? Well, the answer is all about what happened when this molten mess started to cool down. They gave it a name, Chernobylite. It's officially a new technogenic mineral, a type of zirconium silicate crystal. But what makes it so bonkers is that it's just stuffed with uranium. We're talking an amount that's way beyond anything you'd ever find in a natural crystal here on Earth. Now, don't let the formula here scare you. What it's telling us is absolutely wild. It shows that as these crystals were forming, uranium atoms literally elbowed the zirconium atoms out of the way and stole their spot right inside the crystal structure. This isn't just a mixture anymore. This is a whole new material from the ground up. Okay, so how much uranium are we talking about here? How much managed to force its way in? In the most extreme samples they found, it was up to, get this, 12% by mass. Now, I know 12% might not sound like a huge number, but in the world of geology, it is absolutely mind-blowing. To give you some perspective, natural zircon crystals on Earth might have a tiny bit of uranium, but we measure it in parts per million. Chernobylite has up to 12%. I mean, that's not just a little more, that's hundreds of thousands of times more concentrated. Nothing like this exists in nature. It's totally off the charts. So how on earth did this happen? Well, it was a race against the clock. First, the super hot lava, over 2,500 degrees Celsius, starts to cool. Then, in that cooling liquid, these tiny uranium-packed Chernobylite crystals start to form. But then, and this is the key part, the rest of the goo cooled down way too fast, and it instantly solidified into a disordered glass, trapping those perfect little crystals inside. Okay, so now let's go even deeper. Let's grab a microscope and take a look, because when you zoom in on a piece of the elephant's foot, it's like a whole new world in there, frozen in time. So you have the dark, glassy material. That's the matrix holding it all together. But floating inside it, you find these amazing little details. There are these beautiful tree-like crystals of pure uranium oxides. You find tiny, perfect little spheres of melted steel, and you even find bits of unburnt graphite from the reactor core. It's all just frozen in there, like a mosquito in amber. You see, every single one of these tiny features is a clue. It's like a crime scene frozen in glass. Together, they tell this vivid story about the insane temperatures, the violent mixing of materials, and the incredibly fast cooling that happened in those first few hours of the disaster. So what does all this mean for the future? Well, understanding the anatomy of this unique man-made rock is actually super important for figuring out the long-term future of the Chernobyl site. And this right here, this is the real challenge going forward. The Chernobylite crystals themselves, that bar on the left, are incredibly stable. They're tough, they do a great job of locking away the radioactive stuff inside them. But the glassy material all around them, that's another story. It's much less stable, and it can break down over time when it's exposed to water and radiation. So you've got this really weird paradox, right? The elephant's foot is acting like a super secure vault, with those crystals safely trapping dangerous elements for thousands of years. But at the same time, it's also a kind of slow-motion time bomb, because that fragile glass around them could slowly break down and let contamination leak out into the groundwater. The elephant's foot is this powerful, sobering monument to an accident. And it really makes you think, doesn't it? In this incredibly powerful technological age we live in, what other completely new, totally unforeseen materials are we creating by accident? And what kind of legacies will they leave behind?